I'm gonna spin the camera and we're gonna talk about other stuff. Hi, I'm the multifarious fisherman. This is 7 Fish, and we've had a few people inquire about cone angle, transducers, and we've talked about it a little bit before, but as it applies to ice fishing, I think it's an important topic and we will try to help you out there. Some of you might find it a little bit interesting that more of my face is uncovered in these videos than it is in the summer. It's not that cold out here yet. I do cover up when it's bad, and you can still get burnt in this stuff, but at least I've got my head mostly covered. Today we're talking about geometry. Some of you that have been out of school as long as I have, you may not care for that word very much, but it is important. It's got real world applications, and we're going to talk about some of them today. When you run an ice locator, your cone angle will become more or less significant to you based on the depth of the water that you're fishing. In a situation where you have nobody makes a 90-degree cone. If you had a 90-degree cone, which would be 45 degrees off center on both sides, the math is super easy. It's you're 10 foot deep, you got a 45-degree angle, your other side is going to be 10 feet. In 10 feet of water, you'd have 20 feet of coverage on the bottom. If you had a 45-degree cone angle, which is not one either, but you can imagine 90 degree, you go down to 45, you're going to be half that. So a 45 total degree angle is going to give you 22.5 degrees on both sides. You're going to be in the neighborhood 10 foot across it. If you're running a 20, which is pretty common. 20 is kind of a wide cone. Vexilar makes 19. A number of other companies do 20. And the math is going to be very similar on those. When you're, again, in 10 foot of water, your coverage is going to be less. I don't have pen and paper out here, so I'm not doing the math, but I'll show you over here. But when you have that 20-degree cone, you're going to have an area of coverage that is smaller, but still pertinent because the fish will move a certain distance under the ice. What you don't want is that 90-degree cone showing you 20 foot across, because those fish that are more than 6 or 7 feet from your tiny little tungsten jig down there are not coming over to bite, probably. So you're seeing them down there, but they're really not in play for your lure, and you're sitting down there jigging your rear end off and the fish aren't even seeing you. When your theoretical 90-degree cone, when you're running 30 foot of water, that sucker's pretty wide. You know, we talked about it being 20 feet at 10. It's gonna be 60 feet, 60 in 30 foot of water. And that, again, is gonna show you fish that are out of play for your application. So guys will go down to a narrower cone. Vexilar, I think, offers a 9-degree. That's a pretty narrow cone. But a 9-degree cone will give you fish that are on your jig. The fish that are away from your jig aren't going to show up. They're going to show up when they're on your jig in relatively deeper water, 30, 35, 40. You fish yellow perch in Okoboji, fishing 50, in February, you're fishing 50 to 75 feet of water. You don't need to see a football field down there because those perch are not coming over to you. As you get further out, fish that are close to the bottom will disappear under the bottom because of the angle that they're at. They're actually further away from the transducer than the bottom underneath the transducer. So if you're 10 foot to the bottom, you get a fish that's a foot off the bottom, but he's well off to the side, let's say 15 foot off to the side, but he's going to be well further away from the cone, even 10 foot off to the side. He's going to be further from the cone than the bottom is that's showing up on your transducer, so you will not see that fish. And this happens all the time. People don't realize it, but it happens all the time. You drop a jig down close to the bottom, and there's no fish there. You drop a jig down, you start jigging it, and all of a sudden the bottom just starts rising up to hit your jig. Those fish are not in holes under the ground and coming out of the ground to hit your jig. They're just off to the side. And they're far enough out there that your transducer's hitting the bottom. If you measure that and swing it up, oh wait, it's battery number 4. That was from another video, but I can already tell my battery's gonna take a poo here in a minute. New battery on this one's already taken a poo. Cold weather and batteries, not good friends. 3 types of rod, 3rd battery on the day. It is still battery number 4. So transducer, bottom, fish out here off the bottom. You measure it up, oh, it's further away, doesn't show up. When you start jigging, you drop your jig down just above the bottom, you start jigging it, and this fish way over here starts swimming in. He's in the cone, but he's not showing up because the bottom's closer than he is. Well, now all of a sudden he gets to here and he starts to show up. So on your Vexilar, you see something rising up. In reality, he's at the level of your jig the whole time. He's just out to the side, and as he moves in, all of a sudden, hey, that mark just got to where my jig is. Watch my spring bobbard. Dip. Oh, fish on. Didn't grow out of the bottom, came from the sides. I know that's not a surprise for most of you. We've talked about that before. Transducer cone angle do different things for you in different depths of water. So when somebody's asking what's the best cone angle or whatever, it's nice to have a unit that can switch cone angles because you have different applications. But if you fish, you know, a certain depth of water most of the time, you can find one pretty readily that will be appropriate for it. Same application, we're fishing Okoboji. Perch bite is off, so we decide we're going to go up into shallow water and we're going to fish for bluegill, and maybe we're on top of a bar and the top of that bar is 6 or 8 feet deep. Well, if you're in that shallow of water, you run a 9-degree cone, your cone angle is like, your area of coverage is minuscule. So you go to a 20 and you double it, and all of a sudden you've got, you know, hey, I'm going to see a few fish, versus, you know, area of coverage being really small. Wider cone angle in shallower water tends to make some sense. A narrower cone angle in deeper water tends to make some sense. You can get away with Vexilar's 12 degree, pretty broadly applicable. If you're running a Garmin in shallow water, put it on their wide cone angle, their 20, whatever it is, 25, or I don't remember what Garmin's widest is. Bluegill boy have to tell me because he's running that Garmin. Livescope is another animal. It has a ton of coverage. Its cone is not a traditional cone, but its area of coverage is 90 degrees. So same thing, in 10 foot of water, you got 20 foot of coverage side to side. And you're 135 degrees front to back. With it set in the looking forward view, it's basically skimming the bottom of the ice and going backwards about 45 degrees, because bottom of the ice to vertical is 90, add 45 to that, and you're at 135. So you get a lot of coverage in that look ahead mode. When you look down, that 135 is angled downward, so it's no longer skimming the ice. You go further left and further right. What that allows you to do is set it up with multiple holes where you can fish multiple guys in one straight line and see, you know, 4 jigs on one locator, which is pretty cool. On a side note, if you are fishing multiple people on a Vexilar Garmin unit, which we have done, we've been out before where, you know, one guy's battery dies, or you're fishing with somebody that doesn't have one. Like, you punch a hole, you punch a second hole, and then you punch a hole that's in between them and offset slightly. Put your transducer in there. If you've got a wide enough cone, we'll cover both of those holes. If you're in real shallow water, it's tough to do, but if you got a little depth, you can see both baits on there. You can see fish coming up. You won't know necessarily which jig they're on unless you run stacked. We tend to run one jig higher than the other just so we can see fish moving, you know, jig to jig, so you know which guy is about to get bit. And you can trade off so that one guy doesn't have to be the high guy or the low guy all the time. But I appreciate you for joining us today. I hope it was worth your time. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry for another talking video, but that ice ain't safe. I can't go out on it, so we'll be out. Z's already been up north and he's been out doing some other stuff, so we should have a number of videos heading your way. I'm super excited to get more video with the camera, show you a little bit more of that, but for right now, a little bit handcuffed by the lack of real cold weather. So it's coming, and we'll be right there with you. Thanks.